Hello, my name is Jeff. This is Castle Tutelage, your 2A Self-Defense Law Network. About 2 months ago, I went to a seminar for self-defense and law, and I paid $20 for it. And I was thinking to myself, $20 for 2 hours, okay. Seems a little bit on the cheap end, but I did it anyway. And the interesting thing about it was, it was sponsored by this company, Farm Legal Protection, and at the time I did it a couple of months ago, or it was even longer than that. It was probably 4 months ago when I registered for the class, and I couldn't find them on the internet. Firearm Legal Protection, they were like on the third page of a Google search, and it's just like, well, who the heck are these people? Well, it turned out to be a sales presentation for a legal firearms service. You know, these things are popping up like wildfire, and every couple months you start hearing of more and more of them. And so I went to their thing, and I listened to it, and I asked questions, I challenged assumptions, and the guy that was doing the speech basically ignored me. He acknowledged that I had my hand up, but then he ignored about 4 or 5 questions. And, you know, this is a guy, he presented himself with a laundry list of accomplishments, and if they are true, it's, you know, it's pretty impressive kind of thing. And then he goes, you want to have this type of a person with this type of experience giving you this kind of information. You know, and generally I like to think that is true. I don't think that you need to have a 7-year degree to talk about the weather. I don't think you need to have a 7-year degree and anecdotal sausage-making narcissistic statements to make it true. Now, he came across arrogant and brash to me. And it's not because I started to challenge him on certain things, but he is a lawyer in Texas and California. So what that really means is he can only do practice of being a lawyer in Texas and California. He's not, when he came to Minnesota, he's technically not a lawyer. So when he says that only lawyers can give this information, and let's face it, the information that he was given is good sausage making material. It is a good insight on how the legal system works when he was a prosecutor, when he was a defense attorney. He also was the Army's version of JAG at one point on the North Korean peninsula, or Vietnam, one of the two, I don't remember. But he gave bad information for the people of Minnesota. And there's a couple of things that he talked about the Castle Doctrine, and he uses terms like, in the Castle Doctrine, you usually will have protection, duty no retreat in your car. You will usually have protection about your business. You will usually have protection about curtilage. The sad thing about it is not in Minnesota. Let's see, where did I have it? This is the statute from Minnesota about taking one's life, and it's, if you see right here, the black letter of the law is place of abode. Well, you don't live in your car. You don't live in your business. Minnesota is actually silent on the Castle Doctrine with duty to retreat in cars and business. But he's telling Minnesota people who paid to take his sales presentation bad advice on the Castle Doctrine. The Castle Doctrine from Minnesota only spells out here the state versus Galacki, who was, again, when we're dealing with appellate court decisions, there's always a girl involved, there's always booze involved. And it's amazing how dirty this stuff is. And he was a politician for an outlying city in Hennepin County. And this is what Minnesota has as far as castle doctrine, as far as it being in your place of abode, not your car. And Minnesota doesn't even recognize curtilage. What curtilage is that outlining area around your home. It could be an outlining building for where you work, where a lot of other states will incorporate the castle tutelage doctrine as far as not having a duty retreat in those areas, a well-traveled travel path between your house and an outhouse or a water pump, that kind of thing. The law will protect you as far as duty retreat there. But Minnesota, that doesn't exist. The other thing I have a hard time with, this guy that comes in from Texas, Minnesota's different, okay? He was talking to this woman about what to say to the police when you're on the phone call, and he is a big proponent of don't say anything. He did a bunch of anecdotal sausage-making things on how prosecutors are so inept that they can't even get the gun into evidence. So don't even admit that the gun is yours. He's a completely don't say anything. But I know the longer you wait to say that it's self-defense, there's appellate court cases all the time that it took days for a person to say that this is a self-defense event. Bernard Goetz was gone for 9 days before he went into I think it was New Hampshire Police Department and confessed that it was a self-defense event. Whatever you think of, the say nothing approach, to say little approach, that is something that you guys are going to have to understand. But with Minnesota, again, he was talking to this lady, and Minnesota has a certain set of laws. And the lady was saying, well, don't we have to tell him for medical help? And he kept on saying, if you are nice. She repeated it. She looked confused, and she says, and then the guy, if you are nice. You can't do that in the state of Minnesota. Right here, 609.662, shooting victim duty to render aid. It uses in this section, reasonable assistance means aid appropriate to the circumstances, including obtaining or attempting to obtain assistance from a conservation or law enforcement officer or from a medical help. You need, if you are in a use of force event, you need to get that ambulance rolling in some fashion. Even down here in subdivision 3, if you are a witness to a use of force event, you are required by black letter law, and as far as I can tell, no one has ever been arrested on this statute, all right? And it's never been challenged. But you can't say nothing. So when out-of-state lawyers come to Minnesota on a sales speech who is wrong with duty to render aid, who is wrong with the castle doctrine, and he also gives other advice. You know, he's a lawyer, I'm not. So you can take this with a grain of salt, and you can get this with the information you have. He is a lawyer in Texas and California. He's not a lawyer in Minnesota. So if you want to look at it, he and I are on the same footing. He just has more sausage-making material than I do, okay? What he said is, don't go to the hospital after use of force event. And I'm thinking to myself, at this time, I've asked several questions. I've easily got under his skin. I've challenged his assumptions in certain things, and I raised my hand. He acknowledged me on this next topic. He goes to a couple other questions, and then somebody went back in time to an earlier question, and that gave me an opportunity to go back to him and say, I'm sorry, is it your narrative to tell people not to go to a hospital after use of force event? And then I challenged him some more. Wouldn't you want to document perishable evidence, exculpatory evidence, to corroborate your narrative? He hemmed and hawed and started doing his non-answer lawyer, doing his narcissistic sausage-making anecdotes again. And let me see, where you saw it earlier. Here's George Zimmerman. These pictures right here, the police officer took these pictures. George Zimmerman, the knock on George Zimmerman at the time is that he did not go to the hospital. If he was so afraid for his life or great bodily harm, why didn't he go to the hospital? That was a narrative in the newspapers. Just think, if you took this guy's advice, a cop didn't take these pictures, you didn't go to the hospital, but now you need to have physical evidence that somebody was beating you to an inch of your life with no knife, no weapon of immediate threat of death or great bodily harm. It was George Zimmerman's narrative corroborated with the physical evidence of objective, reasonable evidence that you see here, especially here on the back of his head. George Zimmerman's narrative was that Trayvon Martin was on top of him, smashing his head into the ground. At that point, they fought for the gun went off, Trayvon Martin was hit in the heart, and he died at the spot. Also, the other caveat to that is you older guys tend to have heart attacks after a life or death event. So I'm not exactly sure what you need to be careful with. When you're taking information from a sales speech, and this guy didn't even want you to take down notes because you know how lawyers are. They don't want to have notes down because then you have evidence of what they said. I don't know if this guy is just a sales guy. I think all he does is marketing. I think he gets his memberships and he gets lawyers to join the network. I'm not exactly sure. Is he very impressive? Yeah, he has a lot of sausage making material that I found interesting. There are so many things out there. And the other thing, these guys are state specific too. There is a policy, I don't know why, I don't know if they're in Rhode Island, but let's just say if you live in Rhode Island, it's so small. Do you want to not have coverage in Connecticut, Massachusetts? That's a higher level of thing. So again, firearm legal protection, I don't know if these people are good. You got USCCA. I've had them in the past. They have great information. I currently have a CCW Safe. I think, in my opinion, they offer the most for the money. They don't offer a bunch of other ancillary things that may not ever come to avail, and you're paying for it anyway. Another one that has good information lately is Texas Law Shield. Their YouTube channel is fairly good. They keep you up to date on legislative stuff in each state. Another one is Second Call Defense. No matter which one you choose, in my opinion, you should have these. Something that makes sense for you. Also, help training you. Again, when you're dealing with a 2-hour sales presentation, he doesn't, in my opinion, he doesn't give you what you need to know about self-defense laws. The information that he gives you is more for after the shooting and not to make things worse after the shooting, which to me isn't helpful at all, right? I'm not saying that firearm legal protection is bad. I did have a bad experience with one sales guy where I paid $20 for a sales speech that had several items were wrong for Minnesota and an intellectual thing of not going to listen. If you're a criminal, if you're on drugs, if you're on alcohol, yeah, you probably don't want to go to the hospital. Okay, because of any blood draw that can be analyzed, whatever. Get a warrant on the blood draw to see exactly what is going on in there. Yeah, I can understand that logic. If you're a criminal, yeah, don't go to the hospital. But if you have perishable, expungible evidence that corroborates your narrative like the bruises. You saw George Zimmerman's nose, his head. To me, that's more important. My name is Jeff. This is Counsel Tutelage to a Self-Defense Law Network. I hope this helped.